Well, it's great to see everybody here. A nice, snug room. They say this is the speakeasy room, and it seems pretty easy, but pretty crowded. So we're so glad that you're all here, and we have an exciting panel here today. My name is Arthur Newell. I'm with Zions Bank. I run the commercial and the international groups for the bank, and I'm pleased to be here with my co-host, Derek, our newly installed Attorney General, Derek Brown. So we're grateful to have him here with us today.
Thank you.
And you're going to hear from each of these great entrepreneurs, these great success stories. We're missing one that's on his way here, Chris Washburn, but I saw him upstairs, so he'll be down. If you see somebody coming in, please kind of show him the way. But we are really pleased to be here today and to hear from these great entrepreneurs. So I'll start out with the first question, and we'll just, you can take it in whatever order you want to take it, one at a time. But it has to do, one of the things about each of these brands, whether it's Albion Fit, whether it's Teton Sports, whether it's RE Bikes, or whether it's Stanley, they have unique and very well-defined brand and brand strategy and recognition. And so I'm hoping that we can focus on that power of branding and how you've been able to do what you've done with creating the branding that you have. So the first question is about building your brand loyalty. What's been your strategy? And maybe we can start here, Matt, with you. And if you wouldn't mind, just give a quick intro to you and your background, and the same, Dave, when it comes to you, the same to you. And then, of course, we'll just go in that order.
Great, thanks. Hi, everybody. Matt Navarro with Stanley. I'm the president and CEO. I've been with Stanley about 5 years. I'm not an entrepreneur. Our company is 113 years old, and I have the privilege, frankly, of helping with my team author what the next chapter in our brand's next 100 years will look like. We've been incredibly fortunate over the last 5 years to make what we call and start the fourth era of the Stanley brand. If you look at Stanley, we were founded in 1913. Prior to about 1965, we helped America go to work. Many of your grandfathers or fathers or great-grandfathers went to build buildings and went to the job site with their Stanley Green thermos. Many stories, almost every place I go, I get an awesome story about our thermos. After 1965, quick serve food, fast food, snacks, vending machines became much more readily available. So at that point in time, the brand shifted to outdoor and really helped the country get outside and get outdoors from 1965 to about 2020, which is what many of you probably, what comes to mind when you had heard Stanley prior to the last 3 or 4 years. It was likely those two things. In 2020, we made a really big shift and a strategic choice to really target hydration, to be a disruptor in a space that we felt like was a bit stale, was a bit male-dominated, and also was a bit hot beverage targeted. And we, were disruptors with color. We were very targeted towards a female audience that we didn't believe any of the brands in the hydration space were thinking about or serving a product for. And we were really targeted at that. And for the better part of 3 years, we were laser focused on color, female hydration, and cold hydration in particular. And so everybody wants to know, there's no secret, by the way, that's about to come. We had some really good tailwinds. COVID was really good for Stanley. We certainly made the right choice, I think, in a space that was stale, and we were a disruptor. Also, health, wellness, fitness, hydration became just part of people's everyday lives. Those with also just an incredible team that we have built around the world. I call them the Bear Force. Those are really the 3 or 4 things that I think have led to where we are today, and really now starting to define the fourth era, which is actually going after even a more wide consumer base, which maybe we'll probably get to in a little bit.
Matt, I just wanted a follow-up question. I read something about how you were able to create scarcity. and that added some value to your brand. Maybe could you talk about that? And then, but while you're thinking about that, I just want to know how many own a Stanley mug of some sort? Okay.
Wow, it's good. There's a lot of opportunity out there. I saw a lot
Yeah,
of
there's
hands
some
go.
opportunity.
Went up, so
That's
you,
not much. That's good. That's a good thing.
well, can I add that it was funny? I had my good friend of ours gave my wife a Stanley 3 years ago for Christmas, and she said, "Yeah, I'm giving her a Stanley." And I'm embarrassed to admit this. I said, "What does that mean?" And she goes, "Oh, all the ladies have them." I'm like, they all have a mug, like at the gym, like they all like, how ridiculous is that? All the ladies have them, and sure enough, like a couple weeks later, I was at the gym, and my wife had this like yoga dance class thing, and I looked at the side of the gym, and there were like 15 identical mugs. I'm like, oh my heavens, it's for real. And now that I'm aware of that, I mean, it's just interesting how you turned it was like a tipping point.
Yeah, I think those 3 or 4 things have been really good to us. And don't be embarrassed because I asked you what you did backstage, which that's pretty embarrassing for me also.
I've only been doing it for a week though, so.
That's true. In regards to the scarcity question, it was a little bit by accident, to be totally honest. The business scaled and started to grow so fast that we frankly just could not keep up with demand. When we saw that, we wanted to make sure product was readily available, so we actually scaled pretty quickly. But we also started to, partner and do collaborations with people across culture that we did in very short runs that did continue some of the scarcity in key models and items that people had really high demand for, and we were making limited supply. So it was a little bit by accident at first, and now it continues to be a bit of the strategy around partnerships and collaborations.
Hello, I'm Dave Finley. I'm co-founder of Albion Fit, which is a women's clothing company. You might know us by our swimsuits or our travel joggers. Those are some of our bigger, well-known items. I would say the biggest thing for us that's really helped us is being authentic. And we built a team off of that, I guess, like, one of the ethos we have is like, would Liz wear what we're making? And that's something that we always come back to. And it's something that really it really gives a foundation to our brand. But I think it's kind of grown now because we have an amazing design team and a core group of people who design our clothing. And and it really comes from those people and that authenticity. And just having that foundation of like, people who really are, who really, you just really want to make something that you would really want to wear. And anyways, that's helped us kind of build trust and helped us build like a very like smooth line to where we have new customers coming on and old customers coming on, but we're on this journey and we're all kind of going in a place that is recognizable, yet we're going different places.
Dave, do you want to introduce Liz?
Yeah,
Liz?
this is, you got the B team today, but
Yeah.
this is the A team over there.
Yeah.
Liz Finley.
Yeah. And according to Liz, you're the creative genius behind the whole thing. So,
Well, we grew up together. We met working, and so I would say we were reluctant entrepreneurs. We kind of got backed into what we're doing, and that's a whole nother story. But it's nice. I think it really something that's good for brands is really finding people who complement you, because obviously Liz and I are totally different in so many ways. But I think some of my worst weaknesses are like Liz loves to do what I don't like to do, and some of the things that I feel like I'm very strong at. Maybe she doesn't do as much. I don't know. But like, we've also built a team that's pretty that has different elements of people that maybe if you looked at it on the outside, like how do these people go together? But then you say, oh yeah, okay, together they build this very like good foundation.
thank you, Dave. Scott.
Matt, quick question. How many years have you been at Stanley?
5 years. I started in 2019.
What a ride.
Yeah, it's been wild for sure. I tell everybody on my team, like, this won't ever happen again in your career. So, like, enjoy it and
No doubt.
enjoy the ride.
So I started Teton 20 years ago with the idea of having the exact opposite experience that I'd had as a kid camping, because I thought camping just sucked. I remember waking up, and I use waking up in quotes because I'm not sure I slept, but I thought, why does anybody do this on purpose? And just fast forward, I realize now that it's all about the gear, and my parents didn't know better. So we set out to make sure, or I set out to make sure that everything we did was comfortable, dependable, and easy. Those were the three uniques, and everything we do, from the building product to our customer service to how we price things, is comfortable, dependable, and easy. And it has made us really focus on the experience that you have camping. Because if you're talking about the product, about the gear, the morning you wake up, it's probably not a good conversation. But if you're talking about last night's campfire or the hike you're about, if you're talking about the experience, that's what we're all about. And so going back to this brand loyalty question, that's how we build loyalty, is by making sure that every touch point you have with Teton, whether it be the gear or the customer service, everything is about those three uniques. And it just has really bred a very loyal base for us.
Great, thank you, Scott. Chris Washburn joined us. He was upstairs in the previous
In the wrong place.
in the wrong place, but we knew he'd make it here. And his brand is called Ari, and I was going to ask, anybody own more besides Chris 2 Ari bikes at their house? Because otherwise I win this. So it's an amazing product, and encourage you to go look at their array of products. So Chris, do you want to answer the same question about branding?
Yeah. So I think the question, as I'm gathering it here, when as we've built the brand, we've tried to focus on just a couple of things. Our mission statement is create exceptional experiences, one rider at a time. And so I love, if you break that down just a little bit, the exceptional, we talk about acceptable versus exceptional. Acceptable is okay. I mean, but we strive for exceptional in every interaction, every touch point we have with our customers. The creation aspect of it is we try to empower all of our employees to be able to, from every aspect, whether it is dealing in a particular situation with somebody of how to help them on their journey. We use phrases like we're helpful guides. The industry is full of people that are, maybe you'd feel like they're know-it-alls or something. Well, if you don't know what this is, then why are you here? It's all about being very open, welcome, and inviting. And so that's kind of how we have built it up. We aspire to, and what we help people do is it's about a journey. I mean, I'm a big biker myself, and what I like to get to is a state of flow, as they would say. And if you've ever been into that state of flow, everything just slows down and everything feels just amazing. You can think clearer. I have some of my best, thoughts as I'm biking, but we try to help our customers in that same way to get to that state of whatever they're in. And that's certainly through the products that we sell, but it's through all of the other aspects. We don't talk about that we sell bicycles. We actually, what we're doing is we're selling experiences. We're trying to help somebody change their life. It's a different thing. Is once you get on this journey, it may be a bigger step for you, but this is it is worth it. And so all of our metaphors are bike related. The way to get to the top of a mountain is one pedal stroke at a time. You're not going to go and change the mountain and all the terrain with the obstacles that happen. They're there. That's the way. The obstacle is the way, to quote somebody else. And so that's a lot of how we build our customer base. I'm not sure if that is what you were asking, but
And can I ask a follow-up then? You recently had a rebranding of sorts. We bought in Fazari bikes before. I've actually been down to your facilities, awesome. Bought them there, and I love biking. Unfortunately, I just spent a year doing a statewide campaign, which means I think I mountain bike maybe once in 2024.
And how
It was
happy were you
awful.
versus when you were biking?
Well, I think there's a correlation, exactly. But talk about that. Can you talk about, I mean, to the extent that you're willing to, like the reason for it, and because you spent a lot, I mean, how many years branding a certain name only to then change it? And I'd love to know, A, what it was like, what was, and were there a few sleepless nights where you're thinking, oh man, are we going down the right path here?
Yeah, certainly a lot of those. I mean, our brand has been around for 20 years now. It's just been constant growth. We were kind of at a stage as we were getting ready for a huge international push. And I'm always of the opinion of break it down and start over again if something, if we need to change something. So, but it was simply, the reason we did it was to simplify, to expand. As we started looking at how the pronunciation was in different languages, how it would work in other things, and we just said, let's just get to our core. And so the name Ari actually does ironically mean be in the moment. And so it ties into one of our core values, easily pronounceable. And what we do try to do in everything is we have a very complicated product in the sense that, I would love to do a water bottle. It would be so cool. But we have so many different components on there. And so what we try to do is figure out how we can simplify as much as possible. There's so much tech in there. Another one of our things that we always say is we put a lot of tech into our bikes so you can get away from technology out on the trails. And the hope is that you won't really even think about the tech. The bike just becomes the vehicle to your experience, to what you're trying to achieve, to get into that flow state, for
So
example.
to follow up, was it international? I think this is a question we'd probably like to ask each of you is how do you, in a very sort of American specific culture and brand, how do you expand? And it sounds like Ari, does it translate well in other languages because it's just 3 letters? Is that part of it? I'd love for everyone, I think, to answer, like, how do you expand internationally?
I think one of the biggest things that we have found there is with any type of expansion, even in bicycles, you would think that whatever bike we're producing for a market in the United States should work well in Europe or Australia or wherever else. But there are subtleties, and certainly in our industry. And if you go in with just this arrogance of we know everything, you have to look at the market. You've got to understand the market and what really drives that one. And so it goes back to one of our a core that we have also, a core value is we are constant learners. We're always asking questions, always trying to figure out a better way to do something. And so that I think is part of the reason that we simplified that. That helps you with that.
Great. And if you want to kind of mention that international, how do you expand internationally with a brand that's pretty specific?
And maybe as part of that, both on your supplier side as well as on the sell side.
Well, the supplier side is loaded. We have an ABC initiative at Teton, which means anywhere but China. And boy, it's hard. It's hard to get out of that place. Even the stuff that we make in the Philippines, we make a lot of backpacks and hydration packs in the Philippines. The product is sourced. The fabrics are sourced from China. What we do in Vietnam, what we do in Myanmar, the fabrics come from China. It's a stranglehold. But we have this ABC initiative. We've made a lot of strides there. But on the distribution side, I'm with Chris. We have learned that the best way to expand internationally is to hire a master distributor in that region. They know their territory. I think there's a song about that, but got to know your territory. Anybody? The exception being Canada. I think Canada is close enough to the U.S. that we've been successful in Canada without a master distributor. But whether it be Mexico or Asia or Europe or the Middle East, we have a master distributor that we contract with, and then try to get them the product as cheaply as possible. So wherever it's made, we'll fill containers and ship it directly to them. So we're not, shipping it more than we need to.
Yeah, thank you.
we are probably earlier on than these companies, but what I just plug to Senator Flake or the World Trade Center Utah. We're looking to expand in other markets, and that was an organization that we went on a trip with them to England, for example, and we're just, our kids love England, they love London, and we also resonate pretty well there, but we don't really have an international presence. But I would say if you're looking, that was a great introduction, because going through like somebody like that, or finding people in your own area that have these like trade, there's these trade commissions or whatever, looking to them. That was a great way to go into a place, and we haven't yet, so we're on the early ends. But it was a great way to get introduced to a lot of people that we would never be introduced to. So just going in that direction, we haven't really. And then just on the supply side, we have a really close relationship with our factory in Guatemala, and that is something that is like such a strategic advantage to us, and just getting to know your the vendors or whoever you're working with to like a very close level. The things that you can, the overall experience turns out so much better, especially if you're designing things.
Dave, how much of your sales are online versus in your stores?
It's like we do have 6 stores throughout Texas, Arizona, California, and here, but still it's like 80%. So we do a lot just direct to consumer, and that's something that's it's great, because there's a lot of feedback there too. So.
Can I add just a quick note? You mentioned the World Trade Center. And those of you who are looking at doing things internationally, you really ought to like avail yourself of that. Jonathan Freeman runs that here in Utah, and so you went to England on the trade mission. So they do 3, 4, I don't know, 5 of these trade missions every year. They'll go to Mexico, they go to Hong Kong. I mean, they go all over the world, and so reach out to them. Jonathan Freeman's great. He started Down East Home, I think was the company. So he has an idea of what it takes to expand, to build, but they do this on a regular basis. So if you look and see, they've got on their website where they're going, and if there are areas that you'd like to look at. It'll take a week of your time, but you'll be with a lot of other businesses and meeting with substantial business leaders in those countries. So,
and even things you didn't even know that you probably needed. They're like, here's an attorney to whatever. They kind of anticipate things. So it was great.
I third that sentiment. They're great. Miles Hansen before Jonathan. Uh-huh. Jonathan's great.
It's a good team. Okay, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt there.
No, you're good. That's good stuff. I think similar to what these guys said, one of the things that keeps me up at night, or people said, what are you most worried about? For me, it's how fast can we diversify? And it's diversification of category. It's diversification of consumer. It's diversification of region. And then it's diversification of our supply chain. And so 25 through 27, it's a big part of our plan. None of that's probably surprising or like earth-shattering. But we're very invested in North America. Our business is highly concentrated in hydration today. So that's where like region and category comes in. We want to be a very inclusive brand. And so when people talk about male, female, or how do you reach a broader group, we just want to be inclusive, and we want to serve products that people enjoy as part of their everyday and the special moments in their lives. So like that's kind of what consumer diversification I think means for us. And then internationally, my only maybe advice or comments is be targeted. The world's a really big place. So we are picking 3 to 5 markets at a time. Once we feel like we're penetrated in those markets, we'll then take the step to the next emerging markets. And the way we've looked at it is they have a retail network or infrastructure that actually works for us, that we don't have to build it on our own. Is there hot beverage or cold beverage, culture? And then last was, do they draft off of North American culture? Because we've been such at the heart of culture in North America over the last 5 years. And so it led us to places like Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, UK, Mexico. And so those are our, call it 6 or 7 development areas right now. And then we have a phase 2 that hopefully will be in by 2027 or so.
So, Matt, a follow-up question on that. How are you willing to share with us what's the direct-to-consumer through your website sales versus other channels through the store channels?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. We don't report numbers externally, but I will tell you is my position on this has shifted over the last 3 to 5 years. If you go back to prior to Stanley, I was with Amer Sports. They own Arc'teryx, Salomon, Suunto, Wilson Sporting Goods, a bunch of sporting goods brands. We wanted to be 65% direct to consumer. And it was like at the board level pushed down. And what that turned out to be, if you look at even just earnings and some leadership changes with people like Nike recently, is it's sort of forcing the consumer to a channel that you prefer. Instead of being the brand that you need to be, delivering the experience that you need to deliver in the channel that they prefer. And so that's really how we've looked at it. Our direct-to-consumer business is very strong, probably in the 40% of our total global business range, I would say. But we follow the consumer. That's the phrase my team might hear me say more than any. We have great retail partners, online and offline. Our direct-to-consumer team, I would argue, is one of the best in the country. But we make decisions on the focus channels by where the consumer is choosing to shop.
Great. Let me add, how do you measure, or in terms of numbers, how do you measure the loyalty of the brand? You know what I'm saying? Because there are some of these brands like yours, that's all they buy. You know what I'm saying? And once they're there, that's what they look for. They probably don't look for a competing product that, may be comparable in quality but cheaper. How do each of from your standpoints, I'd love to hear how you measure that brand loyalty, because there is a level of strength, right? And we've seen that with some of these Utah companies. Davis Smith's a good friend of mine. He started Cotopaxi. My family has all sorts of Cotopaxi stuff, and we're loyal to the brand. And it's something that we like, but there's more than just the style. There's something about the brand, and I don't know if you feel an affinity towards the brand or whatever, but it's more than just, well, it works for me, right? There's some sort of emotional appeal. How do you quantify that and then magnify that?
Yeah, I can start. That's a really hard question. We could do a whole seminar on that probably with this group, and we could all learn from each other. I think it's really hard. What I look at most is, I say, the consumer wallet. Where are consumers spending their money in our category and on what brands? We get pretty good data on that. So it's a bit of the scorecard for me, even more than what our revenue and earnings are, because to me, it's the crystal ball. What consumers are shopping for today and what our sales results are in stores and online ultimately leads to revenue and earnings probably 4 to 6 months from now. So that's a little bit more, that's a little bit maybe granular, but it also does give me a really good view of brand health. We also have a really close connection with consumers through our social channels. Our social teams, world class, and talks to consumers and listens to consumers almost every day. When they're mad, we know fast. I try to stay off those chat messages because it can make you just like too high or too low. And when they're happy and you've done something they like, they tell you. And so, that's sort of, I would say, the indicators I look at. I also have a very anecdotal one that I call the airport test. So I travel a ton, and just walking through the airports, how many Stanleys I see versus Yeti or Owala or Hydro Flask or brand XYZ is also a really good brand health monitor in my mind.
Matt, I wanted to share a story I'd read about the brand. You can confirm it or deny it, but I had heard there was a woman whose car caught on fire, and she had her Stanley mug in the car. The car burned down, but the Stanley mug stayed together and kept the beverage cold that was in there.
It's true. There was still
apparently
ice in it. It's true. If you
still ice in it, really.
Yeah, it's on all social media now. It was originally on TikTok, which if you're looking for it on TikTok, look fast, because that might not be there soon. But yeah, and we actually bought her a car. So this is a funny sort of background. I was in Tokyo. We sort of saw what happened. I texted my boss before I went to bed. He was the past president. I was like, hey, we should buy this lady a car. I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning and we had bought her a car. So that's how it happened. That was the level of analysis that went into
And is
it.
the mug now in like a museum, the Stanley Museum?
No, I think we let her keep it. There was still ice in it though, frankly. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
I might be taking this a different direction, but I do think that we really try to make it a journey with those core customers, and it's a journey inside of our company, and it's a journey outside of our company. And I think inside of our company, we're pushing art, and we're really trying to do art, and we're trying to like people are getting involved, and it's an internal thing where we're just trying to express something. But then also, it is nice when you have at least a year's worth of information and you can go back and be like, hey, is this resonating? What's resonating? And all the analytics, especially nowadays, even really when we started, it was such a gut, we're just like, man, I wish I knew these things, and it was more like, hey, we go to the store and somebody's wearing something of ours, or we see it a couple places and we're like, okay, that person, it's resonating, like that person, like that, but now even small companies, I'd just say this for smaller companies with AI and whatever, you can, I was just talking to some of our retention people about this because I wanted to give you a good answer. So I went to our people, to Colton anyways, and he's like, well, what's the best is you can take these big data, and nowadays with AI, you don't need this huge team. Like you can do it with a smaller team, and you can be agile, and you can really get some insights about your company that you couldn't get even a couple of years ago. I mean, you just need a huge, these huge big cohorts, to break them down. It was really hard to do, but now you can do that, and you can get insights you couldn't get even if you're a small company.
Yeah, I'll take on this question. Not with a good answer though. It's hard. And I've asked this question of my VP of brand, who's sitting right here in the audience, and he's brilliant, and he has a hard time answering it too. There's a lot of measurables out there that are just difficult to find. Probably the biggest one that I have followed for years is the reviews on Amazon. They're public facing. We can see what they say. We can see how many there are. We're one of the first vendors outside of CDs and books to sell on Amazon. And so we've got a deep, deep presence there. That's what I look at, but Jeremy here in the audience and our VP of sales are like, we can't be so Amazon centric. So we have two other channels. Obviously our business to business, our B2B business with retailers like Sportsman's Warehouse, Cabela's, Bass Pro Shops. You can get, it's hard for us to get the consumer loyalty, but we can get the client loyalty just by how often they reorder and how many year after year after year they're carrying our product. That would be my answer. And then we have a D2C business. Like Matt, we don't share numbers publicly, but this is a pretty intimate group, so I'll tell you anyway. We only do a couple 100,000 a month on D2C, so it's really nothing. We haven't figured that out yet. But like you, we go where the consumer wants to buy, and that's mostly our B2B business and marketplace, Amazon.
One thing, if I could add one thing to that, on the D2C has also become really expensive for consumer retention. So 10 years ago, when everybody was pushing to make sure a high percentage of your business was D2C, is because the profitability was so much higher than through retailers. And I don't want to speak for everybody, but for most businesses, it's becoming much more expensive to connect with customers on your own. So that's a big reason why I think that's a little bit muddier than it was 3 or 4 years ago.
I think for us, if I could boil it down into one thing, it would be word of mouth. If you have customers talking about you in a positive way, that shows loyalty. That shows, how you're going about it. How do we affect that? We can do two things. I mean, we can innovate. You're going to constantly have to innovate to keep the customers coming back. And the second thing you're going to do is delight the customers. If you delight them, you will get them to come back and they'll be talking about you versus somebody else. For us, we're a little bit unique because we're a big purchase item. I mean, you know, an average order price of $5,000 to $8,000, and so they may not come regularly, but we pride ourselves on about 2/3 of our business is repeat or referral business, and so that's one of the ways that we measure how well we're doing is our customers talking about us to others. Are they excited enough that they are either going to buy another product from us or tell a friend about it? And the only way that we can do that we found is just over-the-top service, over-the-top communication, putting ourselves into their shoes and trying to elevate the experience.
Well, we've got we'll transition to Q&A here in a bit, but one more question before we do. I wanted to ask about how do you, if you will, future-proof your brand? And part of that answer that I'm curious about, because all of these brands are really good at innovation, and balancing that equation, how do you innovate and keep your brand fresh in the future going forward? So, Chris, do you want to start?
I think it goes back to if you are not innovating, you are dead. And so the way you're going to future-proof is on all levels. And somebody might look at innovation and think that it's solely in the product, something that you're doing in the product. And that certainly is an innovation, but it's going to be in your systems, in your communications, in the way that you introduce yourselves, whether it's in person or on a website or any of those type of things. You have to be kind of aware of where things are going. And then I think ultimately also is you've got to be true to yourself and to your identity. People will gladly stay with you if they resonate with the brand to the point that they feel a trust, a loyalty. And that is built on so many different levels, from just the products that you're creating to also the interaction that you're having. I'm always worried about the one interaction that maybe didn't go well, and that's the one that gets out on the internet or something, And but I also am an optimist, and I always look at it as like, we're doing the right things over and over again, and it always comes out in the end. If you just have core values that are going to propel you forward, you'll have a brand that will stay. I believe that.
Yeah, I totally agree, Chris. There's a few things we don't innovate, and that's our core values. They don't change. Our three uniques, they don't change. And I think that as you're innovating, it's so critically important to stay true to those core values. And we hire on those core values, and yes, we fire on those core values. You'd think if we hired right, we wouldn't need to fire, but we don't always get the hiring right. But that core is so important that it really doesn't change. So that as time goes on and you get this loyal customer base, they just know that those things they can depend on. But from an innovation standpoint, we try to come out with a new line at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, that is fresh. We have an adventure travel line that's coming out in a couple months that really opens the doors to other retailers for us. So it's not just camping retailers that can carry this product, but it's any retailer that carries travel goods. It's really a progressive line of adventure travel. But the one thing that is consistent about it is that it's comfortable, dependable, and easy. And so you have to combine the two of keeping, this foundation and making sure you innovate above that, but the foundation just doesn't change.
I mean, those. I'm not going to say it better than these two, and that's exactly. I feel the same way. I'm just going to give you a couple examples of. That being said, it's a lot harder in practice, and you got a lot of pressure on you to do different things. Like, for example, you build this trust, but then you have a sale and you kill it, and then people are like, oh, like, okay, let's have another sale, you know, and staying true to your whatever that foundation is hard, and it's so easy to get in these cycles where you can't get out of them. And I think that's the quickest way, is not to like fiercely fight for these ideals, because there's a lot of pressure coming from all directions to do certain things that are not healthy for your company. And so just listen to what those guys said, but also remember that when you're in it, you got to go back to those things. Like it's so easy to be like, yeah, we got this. Like everybody loves our product. Well, it's such a fickle thing, and it's so easy to get into the market now that you always have to be innovating and just like keeping those core values. It sounds easy to do, but then it just takes a little bit to kind of veer off. So,
Yeah, I think these guys said it really well. I'll maybe just spin it slightly, put it in the words that I use with our team, is brand leadership or brand first. And that for us is connection to consumer, connection to community, and brand experience. And we put that first. Notice what's not in there, which we can do since we're a privately held company, is revenue. And sometimes those can be in conflict. And so it's really easy to put things on sale to sell more. We all could do that in a keystroke. It's really easy to widen your distribution to make the business bigger, but those are not the right long-term decisions for the brand. And it keeps me up at night about the next 100 years. That's really important for our business and for our brand. The second thing I would say is that, I think the consumer is very fickle, and innovation, I worry about innovation in a bubble is what I tell our product team. We need to innovate in a way that matters to the consumer. So I am not the innovator or the creative guy, but when I sit in those meetings, my question is, does this make a consumer's experience better? Does it make their life better? Are they going to enjoy it more? Is it easier to use? Those are the things that consumers like actually care about from a water bottle. They don't tell us that, frankly. They tell us that they love the color and it matches their outfit and it's cool and it's sleek and it's light. But that's what innovation is to us, to making sure we're innovating in a way that's meaningful to consumers. So those are the only couple things I would add.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is I'm looking at this through a slightly different lens. I just spent the last year of my life branding the most awkward and uncomfortable thing that you can probably brand, yourself. So I remember the first time I saw my picture on a billboard. Like, that's weird. A little bit creepy, too. I mean, driving down the freeway, you're like, ooh, and my marketing team was like, you've got to do this. And we actually made some choices that were not traditional with what those running for office do from a branding standpoint. And I have the people that have been around a lot longer than I have and know much more than I do say that's a bad idea. And I could go into that. It would take longer to do that. But it's interesting how branding, I mean, it's a product, but I mean, we just all suffered through an election this past year. And you can see how each of the candidates made their own brand, right? I mean, it is a branding issue, and the choices they made had everything to do with what's going on with the culture. And so many of these principles, they transcend not just sort of the retail environment, but in virtually everything that we do.
Well said. Well, do you want
Should we do Q&As? Do you want me
do
to?
some
I can go out there and I'll pass my mic around. Should we
Okay.
do that? Unless is there someone else with a mic out here that's doing that? If not, I can just come out and use mine. All right. Right.
You're like a talk show host now.
Exactly.
honor you.
Chris, I've got a friend named Ari Clow, and he's a professional triathlete. I think
Okay.
he'd be a great guy for you to chat with.
Tell us, send him our way.
But I'm curious, like when you think about like influencers, athletes, obviously Olympics is big, and then obviously with social, with Instagram, like he's also like a musician on Instagram and like is building up his brand there as well. But I'm curious, how do you think about influencers and social?
We actually do a lot with that. We have it on 3 levels. We'll do a lot of athletes. In fact, we just won the Enduro Championships. We've had just great teams that have done a lot on the athlete side. And back to branding, as we're talking about that, we have to make sure as we're signing athletes that they do represent the brand. Certainly they can have their own voice, but they need to represent our core values. The second one are as we talk about our influencers, and these influencers are writers or different things, writers as in RIDER for us, and they are just another realm. And same applies there. But the third one that has been really good for us are ambassadors. And we decided to do this ambassador route here a few years ago. And ambassadors, if I can define it, how we look at those, we don't pay them a dime. We want them to be completely transparently loyal to the brand, and they have to just love the brand. And so we do have a couple of events through the years. One is always at our headquarters, where they'll come from all over, but they come on their own dime when they get here. Of course, we'll feed them dinner and whatnot. But that has been one of the best things that we have, is just voices that are out there that can speak about our brand that are not necessarily us, and that has been a really good thing that we found. I heard from somebody one time, and I've really thought about this a lot. One of our influencers has 6 million followers on Instagram, and I thought, oh, that's so cool. I wish we could get that big. And I said, how did you grow it? And he said, never focus on the mass, always focus on the one. And if you can focus on the individual or a group of individuals, you'll be able to grow it more. You cannot be all things to all people. You focus on what you do well, and that will grow your influence out there, I think. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much for all your answers today. It was incredible to hear your stories of the companies and brands, especially. And a lot of your brands actually been in business for many generations and years as of now. How do you maintain that generational shift from 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, which in this super fast speed environment right now, like changing so rapidly, how do you maintain that value for different clients, different consumers over the years?
Yeah,
With
100 years is tough, right? But there's one thing that has remained the same for 100 years, which we refer to as built for life. It's better business, better life, better world. So we want to build a business that's sustainable and will be there for generations to come. We want to create a less disposable, more sustainable life and world. So we will, in today's world, what that means is eliminating single-use plastics. We're really committed to that. And then it's also making sure that we're making a product that's better than anything else in the market, will last longer, and has the Stanley name, which equals quality. And those are things that, if you look back in like our archives, go way, way back. Maybe not to William Stanley in 1913, but a long time. And fortunately for us, every leader along the way has really held that as core to our values.
I had 8 kids, hoping that one of them would be interested in a succession plan. So far, none of them are. I got a couple left that might be, but yeah, I don't have an answer for that one, except maybe adoption.
Marry somebody.
Good answer. I'm already married. They could marry somebody. Good point.
Thanks, guys, for doing this. Curious, beyond your own brands, is there a brand that you're most envious of, and why? And maybe that can be a quick answer for each of you.
I actually really liked that he said Arc'teryx. That was, I mean, I like Stanley too, by the way, but Arc'teryx is a cool brand. Usually I am wearing On shoes for whatever reason, so those are a couple brands that I really like.
Yeah, if I could change that word from envy to admire, then I'll answer the question. You mentioned Davis Smith and Cotopaxi. I really admire his story and what they do as a business, how he got started. I admire how they adhere to their core values. It's just a company, and it's interesting. I don't look at what others might think as competitors as competitors. I don't consider Cotopaxi a competitor, even though we share some of the same space. I just really admire what he's done. with that company.
Any other questions? I'm going to make my way to the back.
want
Go
me-
ahead and
you want
answer.
me
I'm
to
going to wind
Yeah.
my way to the back.
Mine's actually not in our space. It's the company I probably spend most of my time with over the last 3 years, which is Delta Airlines. And I use Delta as an example in our building, maybe more than any other, because I think in a space of really bad experiences, they do a really nice job with experience.
And they're still innovating, right? I'm gonna just
Totally, yeah.
I totally admire them too. And I was coming back from Guatemala yesterday, and like their menu, it changes. But like why would you have to do that? Like, who are they competing with? You know, they're not. I don't think there's no other experiences that's even close. But I do like that attitude of just like, we're gonna do the best thing we can, and it's not just a little better than somebody else. Because in the end of the day, we're talking about longevity here, and I think that if you have a group of people that's what they're doing, and it's like, in our company, everybody, like, we all have these designs. We make like 10% of what we actually design, and it's like, it's so cool, but it is like, we're just working in there to try to make the best thing we can. And we want art, and I think, anyways, I admire Delta too.
I just had a question about innovation. I know that we're here at the summit, and I really appreciate everything that you gentlemen said today. But I'm curious, within each of your individual industries, what's something you're excited to innovate toward in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I can talk about that in our industry. It's funny. I think one of the biggest changes that have bicycles have been around even before the car. And yet, if you were to look at a bicycle of a few years ago versus even today, they're a world of difference. One of the biggest things that we have found, and we deal in the performance bicycle space. It's not necessarily the ones that you would, go anywhere else with, but I've just blown away of how electric has tended to be on almost everything. I mean, it went from 20% to 50% just this year from last year for us. And the only thing that I can be pretty sure about is there will be a lot more tech in bikes and a lot more, I would be willing to bet that almost every bike at some level is going to be electric. We already build them where they're just slightly electric, all the full electric, so I think that's one of the things in our industry that will happen.
Yeah, I can answer the. It might sound cliche right now because it's the topic du jour, but you wonder, how can AI and camping equipment, get along? Well, the answer, and we're embracing this, is that the consumer especially the consumer that doesn't buy in person, where they can touch and feel the sleeping bag or the cot or the tent, they want to experience as close to that as possible. And so we're discovering that with the technology, we can help them see all the various angles of the product, and they can control the look of it. They can even go inside and see what's inside the backpack. And so I think AI is just beginning. You guys all agree with that. But that's how we are embracing the latest, technology, even in the camping space that doesn't have a whole lot of innovation.
I just say the fit. We're always working on the fit, and there's a lot more, innovation coming out, and we're trying to be a part of that. And obviously, apparel's been around since the beginning of time. But how do you make your whatever you're making not just above a commodity? I mean, there's so much out there. Like what really makes your stuff worth whatever more than you can buy at Walmart or whatever? Like what's the difference? And that's innovation and fit, and we're always that's what we're working towards.
Yeah, I think there's two really big ones that are in our space or our adjacency. One is accessible, clean drinking water and drinking vessels for everyone, no matter where you live on the planet. And you're like, well, how is Stanley doing that? Well, it's not through a Stanley Cup, but we are working with others how we actually innovate and give back and find a way that people in that space are companies in that space are able to help support that. So that's one. The second one is recycle stainless steel, making it an easier process, a better process, readily available, easier transit, because it would just really help the life cycle of our products.
Okay. Arthur, do we have time for maybe one more question? Here, look. Here's one up first, so we'll do that, although he's farther away.
What are your opinions on personal branding for yourselves, and what are your plans for integrating with Meta and making virtual products for avatars to like walk around with a Stanley Cup or ride a virtual bike and actually profit from this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I can take a couple of those. We're looking, I was actually just on a call this morning on augmented reality, which is, I think is interesting, which would you'd be able to, basically see yourself with our product in your hand, wearing what you want to be wearing and how you want to be wearing it. And so like that's another innovation that I think will be interesting. If you think about teenage girls maybe going to prom and they might want a water accessory with them. Being able to see what they look like in their prom dress before they buy it would be something that's pretty cool, right? It's not going to change the world, but it would be super fun. So I think that's first. Second on personal branding, I'll sort of repeat what was said earlier, which is it's not comfortable, right? And when you're fortunate enough to be a leader of a company, I think what I want to do is represent myself, my family, and most importantly, the company, the best way I possibly can by living, breathing, exuding those values. I'll say the other thing, I've been the president and CEO for about a year. People ask me what changed. It's not stress and pressure, I tell everybody. It's this weight of responsibility for the people in the organization to make sure we're making the right decisions for not only the company's future, but more importantly for their futures and their families. So.
Well said.
I just say we like fitting augmented reality with like a fitting room experience. We've been trying for a while to do that. We haven't. That's I guess would be in the works.
We'll have to get a water bottle in that augmented reality.
Great. That's that overall dressing room experience. I think is something that we really pride ourselves in our store, and just like doing that in a kind of virtual setting. That's something we thought of. Anyways, me personally, I am very vanilla. I mean, my wife over there, she is. She's really the face of our company, and she's really the outward and she really is. I mean, it's easy for her. It's like saying it's very authentic and it's really who she is. And I think like personal branding, whenever you're going to start a company or whatever, I think that's the easiest way to do it. Is you don't try to be somebody you're not, or don't try to whatever. Just be you, and people will love you. But also it's just easy. It's easy to wake up. She does stuff all the time, and it's not like she's changing anything. She's just like getting in front of a camera and being herself, and she's pretty amazing. And that's who she is. But at the same time, that authenticity is what really makes it work.
I wish you still had the microphone, because I would ask you, why are you asking that question?
I help people build personal brands.
Okay. So I think my last answer kind of answered the technology question, the AI, augmented reality. But in terms of the personal branding, I have come kicking and screaming into this concept. I have loved flying under the radar. I hate being in front of the camera. But we hired a PR firm about 3 months ago. And one of the things that they've talked to us about is being on podcasts and Good Morning America, and just being a thought leader in this space. And I'm like, well, I'm surrounded by an incredible executive team. I'll just let them be that. And the answer from the PR firm is no. People want to hear from the CEO. People want to hear from the founder. And so I'll do anything for my company, but the personal branding piece in and of itself matters nothing to me. But if it helps the company, I'll do it. And so you'll see more of that from Teton coming out because, we just hired this PR firm 3 months ago. But just know how uncomfortable I am with it.
Ditto. With that, as far as some of the first question that you asked too, it's funny. We actually all of our bikes are custom built for the individual, and so one of our things that we'll say is we can guarantee a better fit for you if you're in New York or Florida or wherever, versus walking just into a local shop and getting it, and somebody saying, "How does it fit? Does it feel good?" Because we will take a series of measurements from everybody, their arm length, their inseam, their torso, their height, weight, everything. And so we'll dial the bike in exactly for them. So in many respects, we've kind of done that. But I don't know that we will ever get to a virtual reality bike ride because we are trying to get people out of that into the real world. There's enough of that now. So.
Well, and I just to piggyback on the AI comment, I mean, it used to be, I think, 24 months ago, the utilization of AI and its capabilities was sort of a luxury. I think it's now becoming a necessity to compete in virtually any industry. I mean, one you may not think about, not to sort of derail things, but as the Attorney General, I run what's effectively the largest law firm in the state. We have about 600 people, 300 of which are attorneys. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I was of the mindset that if you use AI for legal work, and I know a lot of you use lawyers on a daily basis, and you're really tight with your lawyer because you sort of have to be in the world we're in. But I used to think if you're using AI in the legal practice, you're likely going to commit malpractice. You got to be careful. I've now completely shifted. Like if your lawyer is not using AI as a part of his or her daily legal practice, they may be committing malpractice. Or billing you for things that they shouldn't be billing you for. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a completely different mind shift. And it's interesting how each of you at one point in time today has mentioned that utilization for something that you may not think would have application to the brands that you have. So.
Well, thank you to everybody. A great group. Thank you to this panel. Derek, thank you for you. Big round of applause for them. Thank you. Have an amazing day. Thanks for being here today.